We start with the football this evening and a pulsating game at Glencrutchery Road. Before we get into what actually happened on the pitch, before the match there was a special occasion really marking 100 years of St George's, and really a glittering history for them, especially in recent times. They've been one of the most dominant sides, if not the most dominant side in Manx football, Tony.
It'll take some reading, wouldn't it, over the last 20 years, because the trophy cabinet has absolutely busted at the seams, but well done to them. I think it's a special moment for any Manx club to reach their 100th year. There's a few coming up on the horizon, but today I think we're about 4 days away from the actual date where they played their first game. So well done to everyone involved. Incredible when you think back, Chris, where they used to play at Douglas and District's pitch. Then they moved down to Clucas's Laundry, which is down in Tramode, and played down there. And now they got that splendid facility up at Glencrutchery Road. And as I say, the League Championship medals that they've sort of won over the last 15, 20 years is absolutely superb. And, it was really fitting. I think there was a plaque from Corinthians that was presented to them at the start of the game. Also, it was nice to St George's as well. I think they had a pennant, and Corinthians players are signing that as well. So, yeah, nice touch of the day. I'm pretty certain they're up there lashing a few liquids down them. There's a buffet on as well, and I'm pretty certain Corinthians players are still eating what they can, drinking what they can, and then they'll probably head out later to celebrate with the players as well.
Surprised you're not there, to be honest, Tony. A real topsy-turvy game on the pitch. Momentum swung one way, then the other. Corinthians at one stage looked like they were going to run away with it, but how often have we seen it over the last decade? You simply cannot afford to lose concentration against St George's, because they will punish you. St George's 4, Corinthians 3.
Yeah, I don't think it wasn't a great game of football, and to be honest with you, Chris, the weather conditions were absolutely horrendous, and when Corinthians were playing with the wind in the first half, they've got to capitalise on it, and they're a little bit slow to take the bait, because when you've got the wind there, and you've got people like Steve Whitley, you've got Luke Murray, people who can shoot from distance, Conor Gorman as well, as have a pop, and that's where it came from Fraser Vaughan. I think it was about 35 minutes, and about 35 yards out, hit it with his left foot, went to the goalkeeper's left-hand side, and Craig Fletcher will probably sort of beat himself up about it, because it bounced just before he went to collect it, went underneath him, and Corinthians took the lead. And then about 5 minutes before half-time, Steve Whitley from 40 yards out was in the centre circle where he took it from, and Steve's got a sweet left peg on him, wind assisted, and that went into the goal as well to give Corinthians a lead at half-time, 2-0. Start the second half, turned it round. Double substitution, Chris Bass came on, Callum Morrissey came on, and you knew what was going to come, because the clever players, and also with the wind behind them, would go their way, and it certainly did, because within a couple of minutes Chris Bass had made it 2-1, and then to me the goal of the game, and it was the only goal that was scored, Chris, against the wind, and it was Danny Gerrard who got it, picked up left-hand side, cut in past the defence, and hit it really well. And you just thought to yourself then that if Corinthians could hold on to this, then the 3 points would be going their way. But Callum Morrissey had other plans. He's a clever player, and he made it 3-2. Then a couple of minutes later, made it 3-3, and it was all to fight for. And you just felt that St George's were going to come with that winning goal, and they got it. It was, again, Callum Morrissey, who big punt through from the right-hand side, and Furo Davies was there to touch it in to make it 4-3. Game finished, and Corinthians had another couple of chances, but I think everyone was just glad to get back into the changing room. It was absolutely bitterly cold, and the wind just spoiled a game of football.
I mean, the wind was a big factor, I think, in many of the games which took place across the Isle of Man today. A big 5 minutes, as you say, there were goals galore. Callum Morrissey not lost his goal-scoring touch since that brief stint at Michael, but it does once again raise questions of whether Corinthians have the mental toughness to see out these games of football against the other big teams at the top end of the Canada Live Premier League. Yeah,
you could be right, because they lost 3-1 at the start of the season, and here they have lost again. If I have to be honest, I thought St George's in the second half with the wind played a lot better than Corinthians did when they had the wind behind them. And at times it just, I don't know, they're trying to, kick the ball clear. Well, if you're kicking it against the wind, you know what's going to happen. It's going to rise straight away, or it's going to drift. So try and keep it on the deck, and Corinthians didn't do that. And I just thought that, when the substitutions were made, it didn't really have any effect on the game. And, I wouldn't say it's mental toughness, because Ryan Burns was back in. He's a big player for them. But I just think today as well that it just didn't go their way. But I wouldn't say that St George's were brilliant neither, because they found it so difficult with that win, but it was still a class performance for them to grind out that result after being 3-1 down, and to win 4-3. That just shows great character.
It was St George's 10th match of the season, only Corinthians' 9th. We've gone into great detail on this in the past, but 3 defeats and 6 victories for them. How do you assess both St George's and Corinthians' starts to the season?
I'll look at St George's first. I think it's been a good start. When you look at the good young players that they've got there, and we keep saying about them, Joel Ibanez, Jay Skelter Maxwell, you've got Jacob Cook there as well, Joey Morling, but it's still pivotal with the 2 centre-back parents, I think, Sean Quay and Johnny Myers. They just cement everything together. You can see them encouraging. Sean will dish it out. He's a top player. He knows what he can get away with it. Up front, with Callum Morrissey, Callum will be honest, he's still got the legs, but, he's a little bit older, but you can't take away that ability that he's got. And it showed today with that left peg of his. He took them both really well and created one. So Chris Bass, bringing him off the bench as well is a huge plus. And, Furo Davies is in there as well. So they're still a side to be reckoned with. With Corinthians, I've seen them, a couple of times now over the last 2 to 3 weeks, and they've been playing well. But today, they didn't like that weather. The weather didn't allow them to play. And there's still quite a bit of work to do there. It's a young side, so they'll improve all the time. But unfortunately today it didn't go well for them, and they'll be disappointed because, when they look at the defeats that they've had now, St Mary's, St George's twice. If you're going to win the league, you've got to beat the teams that are around you, and that's not happened, and they've put themselves under immense pressure. It's still doable because they've got plenty of games in hand, but now the easier fixtures come up for them, and like your St Mary's and Russians and Peels are all later on, sort of end of February, March, April, so there's a bit of a wait for them, but hopefully they can get it back together and get back on track.